Hi, this is Jason Leahy, Executive Director of the Illinois Principals Association. Thank you for joining me for this IPA Talk remote edition. Of course, as it's happening for everyone right now, we're doing things remotely, and this is no different. I'm coming to you from IPA's office here in Springfield, though I am here all by myself. And it makes me think of the songs like, one is the loneliest number and all by myself and everything else associated with that. But today's date is April 8th, 2020, as we are now in the middle of a variety of things. First and foremost is the current COVID-19 pandemic and, everybody, the stay-at-home order, as well as school closure. Not necessarily the schools are closed, but the fact that learning is happening remotely. And I'm fortunate to have with me Mandy, Ellis, who is the principal at Dunlap Grade School in Dunlap, Illinois. And Mandy, a couple of things. You were recently announced as the Illinois Elementary Principal of the Year, so congratulations with that. And also just one, though it still needs to be officially approved by the Board of Directors here at IPA, though I expect that to happen without a problem. You were recently elected as the Secretary of the IPA Board of Directors, so congratulations for that as well. And you have the distinct privilege of being a repeat guest on IPA Talk. You've done that before as well when we were talking about the book that you have written on reading and how important, of course, that is for kids and being a lead reader in your school. So welcome back to IPA Talk.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So, you and I were just chatting briefly before the recording really got going here, but, be remiss without asking, how's it going for you at home right now?
Well, thanks for asking. I am at home, and what that means for me is having a working husband, trying to maintain his position and all that goes along with that, as well as a 5th grade daughter and a kindergarten daughter. And so I actually just posted yesterday just a picture of, you think you have it bad with remote learning. I'm quarantined with the principal. So I think it's going well. I think it depends on who you ask in our family what's happening, but
I will say, and I share this story often when I'm out speaking at student recognition events and things, but if your kids need to know that there is something on the other end of that. My dad was my principal for 10 years of my life. Now, we didn't do remote learning together, thank goodness, but I had more carnal knowledge of my principal like your children than I really needed. But anyway, so sorry to interrupt. But I'd be happy to get online with them later if they need to commiserate about that a little bit.
Yeah, share those memories. But I think it's been really helpful for me to see through the lens of my daughters as well as a parent what our families might be experiencing about e-learning and remote learning and bring that back to my staff too, just so they have an understanding of the impact of the family structure and how hard it really is, even for those that are well equipped to do e-learning in the home, that it's still a balancing act when there's a lot going on. So we just talked right before this. We're finally getting into a groove, and I think we've been home 3.5 weeks now.
Right.
And I'm just feeling like we're getting into a nice routine with the balance of working and doing the remote learning and just trying to take care of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll just, as I try to, when I can, give a big shout out to my wife, Ashley, who really makes things work in our house every day, but even more so now with just trying to manage, 5 children and their various needs. Fortunately, we've got a few older kids that can self-direct for the most part, which is extremely helpful, but even they need, occasional encouragement, checking in on and all of that. So that's important. Well, let's just dig in a little bit, Mandy. We were hopeful to start with this year getting our Principals of the Year in for an IPA Talk and would have preferred to do it here at the office. But of course, we're going to capitalize on the moment that we're in right now. And, part of leadership is being prepared to lead within a crisis, right? And really, as I shared out with the membership before, leading in a crisis is really a character revealing moment, right? It does develop it, so to speak, but it really even more so reveals it. So, when you think about leading during this time, what's been most important to you when you think about your staff, your students, your learning community in general?
Well, first to say that this is nothing that they teach you in principal school. It's nothing that you can prepare for. And the same thing that drives my interactions with my staff and students every day is still relevant now. And that's the building of relationships first, building of relationships next, and always. And so I think you said it best in a previous board chat that we need to lead at this point with grace and empathy and understanding, and recognize that we're all in different points in terms of our abilities to complete this at home. And so I've really entered this. We have the logistics figured out. We have the instructional remote learning plan. We've discussed grading procedures and attendance procedures and engagement procedures. But really what's been my focus is maintaining a pulse on how are my staff feeling? How are they taking care of each other and themselves and their families? And in turn, how is that translating to our students? What are their basic needs? Are they getting fed? Do they have the hygiene products that they have at home? Do they have the social emotional support, the counseling support, should they need that? And that's been, I think, a bigger focus for us in Dunlap than even the academics at this point.
Mm-hmm. So have you found yourself actually trying to work to meet, besides just feeding, I think, which is something schools are used to doing with our lunch and breakfast programs and things, but have you found yourself actually meeting some of those additional needs, the personal care, whatever that might be?
On a regular our school district, we're relatively small compared to some of the bigger districts around the state. We served 1,100 lunches last week. We're, providing packets and information to students that don't have access to Wi-Fi at home, or providing them hotspots should they need that. We were fortunate that all of our students do have Chromebooks. So at the front end of this, making sure that those that had them in the building were able to come and pick them up and use them. But even access to the technology alone isn't making it a success, because we're still working through the social emotional needs of their families. We have families that are still working through all of this, that are trying to navigate childcare. And we're seeing an increase in the number of families that are requiring food assistance and things like that. And so it's kind of an ever-evolving thing. And I think one disposition that's important with principals is that flexibility and responsiveness. And we've really had to focus on that. What worked last week might not work this week. What wasn't an issue last week can become an issue. And I think the longer the pandemic goes on, the more we're going to have to evolve with that too. Should we have a death, or a student or a staff member, a parent or a family member become inflicted with COVID-19, that's going to add a whole nother layer of planning and support for our families.
Yeah. So just thinking of trying to dial into a couple of the remote learning types of things that you've discussed here, Mandy, I guess first and foremost, and this kind of gets back into the leadership side of things, as you mentioned here with communication and such, how are you staying connected with your staff? I know Zoom obviously has become extremely popular there. But, beyond that, there are, I'm sure, teachers that have some of their specific individual needs or questions that they've got, situations that they're dealing with. So, how are you trying to have, quote unquote, a virtual open door policy, I suppose, might be the best way to describe it, for staff to come to you with questions that they may have?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's been intentional but informal. And so we do have a staff Facebook group that's closed. And yesterday I posted, share with a Bitmoji or a GIF how you're feeling right now. And fortunately, yesterday it was sunny and warm. And so a lot of the teachers were feeling pretty good about yesterday. Or it's texting in small groups, grade level groups. How are you feeling? And reaching out to those individually. I've sent mail to all of the staff just with a handwritten note, just so there's different checkpoints so they know I'm thinking of them. I started each day by sending them a music video from YouTube. And so they get those at 9:00 every morning. I found that on one of the principal Facebook groups. Just to let them know I'm thinking of them, and just to have today was Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer, if you were wondering.
That's very appropriate.
I know we've gone through that, as well as Frozen 2's Into the Unknown, Walking on Sunshine, just a variety of different songs, just to let them know that they're not alone in this, that we can have some levity and some enjoyment through the situation of being home with our family, but it is a hard time, and recognizing that. So I think just consistent conversations. We do have weekly Zoom meetings to have a formal checkpoint. But a lot of the intentional, informal opportunities to touch base with them are important too. So I get texts at all times, just trying to be responsive to that, emails responsive to that. And it's hard. It doesn't feel like school when you're in your home.
Right.
And you're not surrounded by the people that you see more than your own family most weeks. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, moving beyond that, let's talk a little bit about keeping track of kids.
Yeah.
And I will just put this in that I've been very grateful for the way that the state board has been leading through all of this. You talked about empathy, grace, all of that. We're really keyed off of Dr. Allen with that and the state board staff. I think that they've been modeling that for all of us while they try to deal with the complexities of schooling kids remotely and providing recommendations and guidance that go along with that. And, one of those has been dealing with attendance. And of course, the current position is more so than just trying to, do this from a compliance perspective or for a report. We just want to make sure that we're checking in with kids to make sure that they're okay. Now, we're still waiting to hear from them, and they're still working through. These decisions just don't happen always quickly, though we would prefer them to be sooner, to see what are some types of reporting that we might need. But, with all of that being said, what are some strategies that maybe you've deployed in your district just to try to keep track of students, either through the technology that you've got or some other creative methods?
Well, kudos to our high school principal. He's running a building of about 1,400 students in our district, and he has several. A large number of students that are not engaging, and so they've instituted an engagement spreadsheet that the rest of the 7 buildings in the district have modified to work towards theirs. And so essentially, each building is having teachers report the students that they're not hearing from on a consistent basis, and asking them to reach out in multiple ways, whether the first contact be, email or an online platform, followed up by a phone call. And if we're not engaging with students still at that level, then the next level of support is either the counselor or myself. We'll reach out with a phone call to ensure. And it's never from a place of compliance of you're not doing the work or your child's not doing the work. We haven't seen them online doing their work. It's more of, how are you doing? And starting the conversation there. What do you need from us? What support can we offer you? And just recognizing what they're dealing with at home. And it could be they've lost their jobs or they're going through hardships. They could be, Peoria is a hub for the medical professionals. So we have a lot of doctors, nurses, medical admins, and support staff that are parenting as well as trying to lead their children through this. So kids are still going to daycare. And we may not, it's not a priority for some families, and we have to be, recognizing that too. So the spreadsheet's been really helpful in just keeping track of how are we supporting families, what needs do they have, and looking back at that. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that recommendation. That's a real tangible piece of advice or thought for people that they might, want to consider deploying within their own school district or school as well. So pivoting off of that, what about grading, Mandy? That's probably something we get consistently a lot of questions about, attendance being maybe the other one currently. What's been your approach in Dunlap?
Wow. And I think it's different at the elementary level than at the middle school and high school level, and it has to be. Yep. And our focus just has not been on grades at the elementary level. Mm-hmm. And I recognize that might be controversial, or that might be a challenge in some other districts or other levels. And we're really just looking at third quarter grades and recognizing the ISBE's recommendation to not allow grades to hinder or adversely affect students. And so fourth quarter grades will either be incomplete for students that did not finish their work, or not less than their third quarter grades. And the focus really is just on advancing learning, but recognizing that we cannot replicate what a teacher is capable of doing in the classroom. And when we transition back to site-based learning, whether that be later in May or next fall, there are going to be some gaps that we're going to have to plan for, and the grades are irrelevant. Really just what is the well-being of our students, and how are we supporting them emotionally and physically at this point. So I kudos to the teachers. My daughters are in the district, not in the same building as me, and their teachers are doing a fantastic job just trying to connect kids with each other and trying to maintain the relationships while still pushing them forward as much as they can, but without widening the gap between the students that are participating and not participating.
Absolutely. So I'm just curious, as we talk about attendance, grading, reaching out to home if necessary.
Yeah.
What are you hearing from parents right now? Questions they may have or concerns? They have so many tools at their disposal, to get to them, they can use those right back the other direction. So what are you hearing from parents?
The first couple of weeks we had a lot more questions, and I feel like this is the first week where they kind of understand the expectations. And we use the analogy in Dunlap, we've referenced it quite a bit, of we're building that airplane while flying it. And the same goes true at home. And so general questions like, what does this look like for the experience? I think that's what is bothering families the most. Having a fifth grade daughter, not being able to go tour the middle school prior to the end of the year, have her fifth grade party, just as I'm sure eighth grade families and senior families are having. It's just not having those connections. And I think that's really what it boils down to, is schools serve so many more purposes than just the academic parts. And that's really where the questions are coming from. I sat in on our PTO meeting last night and just listening to them problem solve. How are we going to do Teacher Appreciation Week remotely? How are we going to recognize kids with their awards day at the end of the year? All of those other things that are not academic focused, but really bring the whole experience of school into light. And so I don't know if you ever read the book, The Power of Moments, but that just kind of keeps resonating, is how do we continue to make it special and recognize that school is just so much more than just the pencil, paper, and teaching. And we can't always replicate that from home. Yeah,
agreed, for sure. Let's wrap up with this, Mandy. Obviously as the leader, you're giving a lot of yourself. So how are you taking care of yourself through all of this?
Well, thanks for asking. I'm 30 weeks pregnant too, with my with my third.
I didn't that off the top, but yeah, wow.
So that adds a different dynamic, and I will say, self-care. If you could see, like I'm dressed and my hair and makeup is done, but I'm still wearing lounge pants, so that's been really really nice. And we've been taking a lot of family walks and hikes. That has been great in the evenings, just to get outside and get fresh air. And staying connected with our family. I think that's been the hardest. My parents are in their 70s and they live locally, but not being able to see them, especially with the Easter holiday approaching, maintaining that social distancing for their health and their benefit. Right. Doing a lot of reading, and that's been definitely a benefit. And, I will say eating a breakfast in the morning and eating lunch has been really helpful. Typically our mornings are pretty chaotic in terms of trying to get everybody ready and going and out the door. And we're having our cereal or our pancakes or our eggs right at the breakfast bar and just enjoying our time together. And so that element of self-care has been helpful. And every once in a while, a nap. Yeah.
When you can, that's right.
Yeah.
Naps are good.
Yeah.
I'll get enough of them for sure. Mm-hmm. Well, Mandy, Ellis, thanks for joining me again
my pleasure.
For this IPA talk, just sharing your experience, with remote learning and what it's like to lead through all of that. I appreciate the good work that you're doing, and congrats again on being named Elementary Principal of the Year, as well as winning the board election to be Secretary of the IPA board here starting this next year, starting July 1st. You'll begin your first 3-year term for that. So that's wonderful. Thanks again.
Yep. Exciting year. Thanks for having me, Jason. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you.
I appreciate it. It's my pleasure. So again, this is Jason Leahy, Executive Director of the Illinois Principals Association, joining you for this IPA talk. Thanks for listening in or watching in. Again, it is April 8th, 2020, as we navigate these waters of the COVID-19 pandemic. IPA is here for you. If there's anything we can do, don't hesitate to reach out. You can call even during this time. Email us or check us out on the web at www.ilprincipals.org. Take care.